Hello and welcome to According to John Unbridled. Today, the topic, the title of today's podcast is The Fatherhood Factor. I sat down today to do this podcast because I've been dealing with a lot of broken children, broken dads, broken wives, moms. I'm just going to tell you, husbands, like the family today is jacked up. And I'm not talking just a family in the world. I'm talking the families in the churches. And mainly because I think that the churches have let the world into their homes, and the Christians have let the world into their homes, and is doing massive damage on so many levels. And so I thought today what I would do is focus mainly on fathers, dads, and because dads, you really do wield the power, if you will, the influence. And I don't know that dads really understand this. So I've dealt with many dads that will they either give up or they dominate and blow up, and there's so few that just hang in the pocket in that mid-level. They're balanced out and it's good. And man, God bless you fathers that can do that and that are doing that. But fathers play an incredible primary role in the lives of healthy development of their children. And as a matter of fact, it is fathers uniquely contribute to the intellectual, the social, the emotional well-being of children. I mean, in such a way that I don't even know that dads understand this. And so the reality is, guys, to simply put, our children need us. They need us. And not just when they're children, little children, but when they're adult children as well. Now, if they're married, they may not need us as much, and they're adults or on their own. I get that. But I'm going to tell you, Dad, you make a significant difference even in your adult children. If you belittle them, if you drown them out, if you don't continue to love on them, man, you will devastate them, even as adults. And so this doesn't go away when it's just children, and then when they're adults, we separate from them. It doesn't go away when they're adults. And what you say and what you do still makes a massive difference. I was talking to a friend of mine here a few weeks ago, and I told him, I said, listen, man, he was having issues with his children, or some of his children, and one in particular hadn't talked to in a while, and I said, man, what are you thinking? Like you need to break the ice, and of course Dad's like, well, the son hurt me, and it just went back and forth, and they were mad at each other, and I was like, yeah, but somebody's got to be the adult here and take responsibility and just step up and, man, extend forgiveness. If you're wronged, if you have been wronged, then extend forgiveness. It's okay. Listen, there is nothing that has went on that could justify, especially on the simple levels of just hurting someone's feelings. Oh my goodness, that could justify not talking to your children. And so, I encouraged them. I said, hey, I need you to step up, man. I really do. Your son, your daughter, they're in trouble. They're crying out, and you need to step up. And I don't know. I need to sit down and talk with him. I haven't done that yet to see how all that's going. But the point is that Dad controls this. And if you're going to be dad, you're going to be the adult, at least the oldest adult, then step in and fix these relationships by extending grace, extending forgiveness, and making them better, and coming together as family again is so vital. But at any rate, listen, the bond that Dad and his children have, obviously this is a lifelong relationship, and we got to stay plugged into it. And so we have to constantly be investing in and putting in to our children, and then of course our children put it into us. It goes back and forth. But Dad, you are the influencer, and I get that sometimes men don't have father figures, or children don't have father figures, especially today. I know that my dad and we had an incredibly strained relationship. We didn't talk for years, and the family was just jacked up on every level, and every one of us. And divorce came, and divorce doesn't help. Divorce divides, and then he married a woman and then left and moved several hours away, and so then that got compromised, and then there was just bitterness, and it was a train wreck. And I would tell you that my brothers and we felt that. And it was devastating to many. And not only that, but the ones on the woman's side, their children went through a lot. And that divorce just caused massive devastation. And so I get it. Maybe some guys, their dad hasn't been there. But just because your dad wasn't in your life doesn't mean you don't need to be in your children's lives. It's no excuse. So what? You've been hurt. Got it. Every one of us have been hurt. And I hate to say this, but you're going to have to suck it up, because your children are not you and your dad. You be dad. And because I'm going to tell you, I just be quite honest, one of the things that my dad taught me was what kind of dad not to be. I mean, he put that in me pretty good. I understood there were some things that I was just never going to treat my children and do things to my children that my father did to me. And so we learn from it, but we don't make an excuse for why we are not loving on our children and raising our children, strengthening our children, because our absence, it creates a devastating void, and it moves on in life. I mean, that generational sin. It continues if we are not careful. And I got some interesting stats. And so if we look here, we see that a father does contribute intellectually, socially, emotionally. And then if we grow up fatherless and we're not careful, we're going to perpetuate the cycle. And then also we have to understand that when we engage as fathers, we see that we influence the development of self-esteem, risk-taking, and cognitive functioning. Now, I know today we got to be real careful with that self-esteem, getting them to look at themselves all the time, because if we're not careful and that's out of balance, then we create this really selfish, annoying little brat that nobody likes, including the parents. So we got to be careful with that and make sure we line things up with the Word of God. But guys, I'm going to tell you, we can destroy their motivation, and that's why I like to look at self-esteem as their motivation in who they are, being strong in who they are. And if we're not careful, we will destroy that, and then what do we have? Well, we end up with these woke kids that we have today that think they're the opposite gender, that think that men can have children, that think they're entitled to everything, that are spoiled little brats that go out into society and they don't even know how to deal with society. So we have to be careful and keep that balanced. And when I say self-esteem, I'm talking about their motivation to do good because they've been strengthened in who they are. And so we want to make sure that we pay attention to that. But one of the things here, another statistic that I found interesting is adolescents and teens are less likely to experience trouble with substance abuse, teen pregnancy, and more likely to stay in school, go to college, excel in a career, and other achievements, economic achievements, because dad has stayed in their life. And so we have to be aware, Dad, that we do make that much difference. For young adults, and when I say young adults, it's we'll just say 18 and up, they've graduated high school. The father-child relationship directly links to positive life outcomes, including successful marriages and positive relationships with their own children. Why? Well, because they've been taught. Dad, you have instilled into them, and then they'll carry that on. And what I find interesting is most of the time, not always, but most of the time, Young girls will marry their dads, and young men will marry their moms, meaning that they will marry who they have grown up with and who has taught them. And so, Dad, if you really want them to have a great marriage when they go out, then you make sure that your home is what it should look like. It should be mom and dad loving one another and loving the children and establishing boundaries and raising them up in the way that looks. And so, Dad, if we're gonna make the difference, then we have to make a difference, which means we have to live that difference out. It's interesting because research shows that when fathers are involved, their children are more successful. Look here. They are 2 times more likely to go to college, which I don't encourage college today, but the point is that they're likely to go on and continue growing their career and learning, and because they're established, they don't quit. 80% less likely to spend time in jail, and 75% less likely to experience teen pregnancy. Look at these numbers. And this is research, guys. These are numbers that I pulled off the internet, and you can go anywhere and look. This is from 2023. These stats that when dad is involved in their children's lives, 2 times more likely to go on with their education, 80% less likely to spend time in jail. 80%. Holy cow, this is devastating numbers. 75% less likely to experience teen pregnancy. Why? Well, because if a young lady is secure in who she is, and dad has shown her true biblical love, and dad has loved on her and strengthened her and encouraged her, and she knows that dad loves her, she doesn't go looking to another man for love. She doesn't need that. Dad is sufficient until the teenager grows up to be a woman, and then the woman knows what she wants because she's secure in herself. And so, Dad, you do make that much difference. Man, dads, we really got to get a grip and understand that we are so much more than just financial support that we bring in for the family. We are so much more. Do not allow the world to lie to you like that. Fatherhood has benefits for dads too. Or engaged dads set goals. They achieve a greater success. Engaged dads have healthy habits, and these healthy habits become more important in their life. Engaged dads, their self-esteem increases as dad sees his value. And that self-esteem is that motivation that I was talking about earlier. And he'll be motivated to do more and to be more and to teach more, to be a better dad as he sees his value. And so, Dad, you have to understand and look at your children, because I would tell you, some of you dads out there, you have wonderful children. But the problem is you're so angry at yourself or I don't know, your outlook. I don't know. But you're not looking at your children and praising them for being the really good children that they are, but you blast them and you unseat them and you say some just nasty things that don't need to be said. It's not true. But for some reason, you want to train wreck their life because maybe you feel like your life is train wrecked or you got to lash out or argue. I don't know. I don't know what it is. But, Dad, if you don't see your value, how can you ever teach children to see their value, or the young adults in your life as your children have grown up at any point? How can you teach them value, personal value, when you don't see value in yourself? Because all you'll do is destroy your child, because you'll attack your child. If you feel threatened by your child because you look at yourself one way and you see your child another, and I don't know, but Dad, if you don't see your value, you will absolutely destroy your children's value. And so, and then here's another interesting thing. I've talked about when dads are there, but how about this? When dads aren't there? The stats on this are interesting as well. When a dad isn't there, 71% of all high school dropouts. 71% of all high school dropouts is because dad wasn't there. 90% of homeless and runaway children, 90% of homeless and runaway children, dad wasn't there. This number should take your breath. 63% of youth suicides happen because dad isn't there. 63%. You know, I had someone reach out to me and say, you know, they wanted to meet with me, and so at any rate, we ended up talking, and they said, how is it that you feel like you want to commit suicide after your dad absolutely tears you down and shreds you up? Why is it that dad can do that? Why is it that dad has that much influence? 63% of suicides come because dad's not there. And listen, I'm not just talking that dad isn't in the picture at all. I'm talking, dad, you can be in the picture. You could be home. So if you're in the picture and you're home, that's wonderful. But if you aren't engaging with your children, you're not there. If you're verbally abusive, you're not there. If you're physically abusive, you're not there. What I'm talking about being there is being engaged. And when I say dad isn't there in these statistics of high school dropouts, 71%, homeless and runaway children, 90% of the time, dad's not there. 63% of youth suicides, dad's not there. That's what I'm talking about. Dad, if you're in the home, but you're not plugged in, raising healthy children instead of just blowing them up, you're not there either. I mean, there's no difference to be absent than to be there and be abusive. The end result's going to be the same. So as I looked at this and I thought, okay, how can this one be beneficial, right? Because I really wanted this to be a healthy conversation, and I'm not trying to. I don't even know if this is coming across well, because, you know, as a pastor, I got to pick up the pieces sometimes. With a brokenhearted wife, mother, brokenhearted daughter, brokenhearted son, brokenhearted family that's just they don't even know what to do. And dad, you control all of that. And I had a discussion with my friend, and that's what I was trying to tell him. It's like, you have the power, man. You make the difference. And so, dad, I want you to know that you make the difference. And sure, you might have the power to push your children over the edge, and you think that being aggressive with them is it, but it's not. You think that manhandling is it? It's not. Abuse is it? It's not. You're not going to beat your kids into subjection. I mean, you might beat them, and they may, for the moment, obey only to stop the beating. But the minute they have opportunity to go, they're gone. And so, Dad, we have to be real careful. Colossians 3:21 says this: Fathers, do not provoke your children, lest they become discouraged. The word is erethizo, and it means to stir up, provoke, irritate, or exasperate. And the Bible says don't do that. Don't provoke your children, be disheartened, because the term literally is to be without courage or spirit. And Dad, you could just take the life right out of your children if you're not careful, by yelling at them and demeaning them and belittling them. You literally just take the life right out of them. And if we don't obey the scriptures, our children lose heart. And then we get mad because they lose heart. We're like, what's wrong with you? And well, what's wrong with them is Dad. I mean, that's not all the time, but I'm just saying, Dad, you take responsibility for your role in this. And this losing heart or without courage, without spirit, literally has the sense of being in despair, listless, no life, just. And then we get depression. You realize dads are out of the picture more today than ever, and our children seem to have no life. Depression is set in like never before. Meds are like never before. And so, Dad, we got to be so careful of this. And if you're not careful, you can take the heart of your children with words. And, I mean, just your words, Dad, carry so much power. You can encourage your child. And I'm not talking just your young child. I'm talking your adult child as well. It goes both ways. And if we're not careful, man, we'll destroy their thinking. We'll destroy their courage. We'll destroy their heart. Why? Well, because they love Dad and they really want Dad's approval. They really want Dad's love. And if you don't give that to them, that is a massive part of their life that gets yanked out. And honestly, it's like putting them in a 4-wheel car and taking one of the wheels off. The front wheel. It just makes life so much more difficult to navigate with and through. I'm going to point out several ways that dads can cause their children to lose heart. And I'm not meaning for this to be a negative. I think we need look at this podcast as a way of saying, hey, dads, watch out for these pitfalls. Hey, Dad, watch out. Caution, because the road ahead is out. If we go that way, we're gonna crash and burn. So I don't want you to crash and burn. I want you to pay attention and understand what to look for, so that we don't do this to our children. That's all I'm saying. So I got 10 of them, and this podcast is probably going to go longer than I want it to. But I think we need to get all 10 out. Okay, so. How are the 10 ways that dads can cause their children to lose heart? Number 1, overprotection. And when we overprotect, it literally can display that there's no trust. We don't trust our children. And if our children feel like we don't trust them, then they feel like they can't earn their trust if there's this constant overprotection. And then they're like, hey, you know what? There's nothing they can do to earn Dad's trust. And so that is the children begin to despair. And then all of a sudden they might believe that the way they behave is irrelevant. Because, listen, I can't gain your trust anyway. And if I can't gain your trust, who cares what I do? And then they'll go into self-destruct mode. So you have to be really careful not to overprotect, because if they want to do something, you constantly say no, or you don't trust them, or you display that you don't trust them, they'll give up, in the sense that it's like, then who cares how I behave, because it doesn't matter. So be cautious of that. Number 2 is by showing favoritism. And you guys understand that. And then, of course, this creates terrible sense of frustration within the child. And, I think of Friends. And if you watch the 2 on Friends, man, I can't even remember their names now. But it's the brother and sister that are on Friends. And the parents always chose the son over the daughter, demeaned the daughter, raised up the son, and you could see the frustration in that relationship. And so be very cautious that you don't create that, because if you do, then that literally will create a third problem too, and that is depreciating their worth or their value. And if we are communicating to children that they're not significant, then they become discouraged again. They stop trying, and then there's all these issues that we have, and the child will literally shut down. Because if there's no value to them, they will shut off. And then you're going to get angry because they're not doing what you expect them to do, right? And when you do that, it just keeps compounding, which takes me to number 4. Children lose heart when there's unrealistic goals. And dads, you can do this by never rewarding them, never letting them feel they have succeeded. Nothing's good enough. They're never good enough because you have set unrealistic goals. And most of the time, these unrealistic goals, Dad, you don't even keep. You don't even do what you expect your children to do. My dad used to tell me all the time, boy, you do as I say, not as I do. And you know what I found myself doing? What he did. Because what he said didn't matter. And so don't set unrealistic goals and then you never reward them. You always make them feel like they're failing, that they can never succeed, nothing's good enough. And here's what the result will be. Many of them will literally commit suicide. They get so frustrated, they don't see any way out. And nowadays, especially with today's mentality, they think checking out's just the easiest way to go. And they'll check out. And if they don't check out, they'll get with a bunch of people that will help them destroy their lives. Be so careful that you don't put so much unrealistic anticipation on them or goals on them, and you don't reward them and build them and grow them, because, man, they will stop. Number 5, failing to show affection. Dad, you need to communicate. You need to communicate love to your children. And that's both verbally and physically. Man, you give them hugs. You tell them you love them. You give them high fives. You give them fist bumps. Man, I'm telling you what, you got daughters, man, you kiss them on the forehead and you give them a big hug. You got sons, man, you give them a big hug. And you know what? You can kiss them on the forehead too. But you better show this affection, and you better tell them that you love them, because they need, and listen, the world out there is telling them enough. You need to establish this, because they need to hear it from you more important than anybody else that they hear it from. Dad, you've got to step in and do this one. If we don't, then here's what will happen. Discouragement, and you'll alienate the child. Because if they don't feel loved or wanted, they're just gonna move away from you. They're gonna step away, and then you're gonna be. I'm telling you, you will be devastated after a while. That especially the older you get, that your children are not around. I could not even imagine not having my children around me. I couldn't. That would devastate my world. I love my kids. I love my grandbaby. And listen, did I discipline them? Absolutely. But was I also there to encourage them? Absolutely. Again, there's balance. There's balance. You can't give in to everything, because then you upset the cart one way, and then you can't be so strong-armed because you'll upset the cart the other way. There's got to be balance. But man, if you don't love on your children, you absolutely will discourage them. The 6th thing that will cause your children to lose heart: not providing for their needs. When we provide the necessities, you show them respect and concern, and that you love them. And listen, I'm not talking their wants. The wants are okay too. I'm talking their needs. By taking care of them, you are showing that they matter. You are showing that you are thinking of them, and you want to make sure that they're okay. And so if you do not provide their needs, again, we go back to you're not concerned about them. Number 7 is when there's lack of standards. We have to discipline. We have to teach. We have to do that. If we fail to set standards, then we will create insecure children. We will create children that feel like they're not loved. You can't give children, and I'm talking young children now, adolescents, teenagers, you can't give them too much freedom all at once and expect them to stay in there, because they can't handle that. And they'll derail on you. And they'll feel insecure. They'll feel unloved. I remember having a conversation, and I was dealing with a family, and I was dealing with some kids. At any rate, one of them got disciplined and spanked. The other one didn't get anything. And the girl said to the one that was complaining for getting disciplined, she said, "I wished I would get disciplined, because then at least I would know I'm loved." See, that's how they look at it. Giving them free reign and no standards. You don't put any bumper rails in them to keep them contained until they're ready to go to the next level. Man, they will derail themselves because they're not loved. They don't feel loved. Number 8, children lose heart when there's criticism. Okay, this one here, I'm going to park just for a second. And as a matter of fact, I put this in my notes. The child learns to condemn themselves, and they learn how to find fault with others. They learn to doubt their own judgment and to look down on their own abilities. They disparage their own abilities. They distrust others' intentions. And more than anything, they learn to live with this continual expectation of impending doom. Because they know every time dad talks to them, it's going to be negative. They know that they're just not good enough. And it doesn't matter how good the kid is, to dad, they're not good enough. And maybe, dad, you have dropped the ball somewhere. Don't criticize your child because you dropped the ball somewhere, so then you criticize them to make them look bad. Because I'm going to tell you, that does damage that many can't recover from. Words do matter. And this isn't about being soft or woke or the children today that they can't take harsh words and they need safe places and safe spaces and blah, blah. It's not about that. This is real stuff. Because I will tell you this. I feel like I'm a man's man. Listen, I will stand my ground. I believe I'm a man's man. And that's not tooting my horn. I don't say it arrogantly. I'm just saying I stand firm. There's nothing soft about me. As a matter of fact, if you talk to my wife and kids, they're like, yeah, dad can be over the top. Because I can. And not necessarily that's negative. It's just, I'm the man's man. And I respect that in men. I also respect the softer side of men that can approach it from a different angle with less intensity. I respect that too, because that has nothing to do with being a man's man. It has everything to do with the fact that they're just confident in who they are and they're men. And I'm very confident in who I am. I don't need to destroy my children and criticize my children. I don't need to do that. But some of these men, these dads out here, maybe you got hurt because your dad, and so your dad did it to you, but you don't like it. Man, when my dad did that to me, and I to this day, I still remember the harsh, hard, out of line things that my dad said to me. And I don't know why he said it, but they weren't true. But man, they blew me out of the water. And he only said them because he was angry. Or he only said it because he made a promise and then he broke the promise. And so rather than just owning up to the fact that he broke the promise, he belittled me like I didn't deserve the promise that he made. It's crazy. And so, listen, man, if you got a kid that works hard and stays in the pocket, especially if no other child is doing that or the rest. Listen, if you got a good kid, whether they're adolescent, teen, or into the adult, don't beat them up. Don't beat them up. Man, it's so hard. We want kids to do well today, and we complain about children not doing well and how they're off the chart. But I wonder how many of them, their dads either wasn't there, or if he was there, he just literally criticized them. Maybe he didn't set standards, and so they didn't feel loved. And so because dad wasn't dad. Dad didn't do his job. And maybe you were dad when they were kids, but as they got older, somehow you got derailed from being dad. And now you're just bitter, angry, and frustrated because maybe you've made some really poor decisions. And you haven't dealt with them, and so you take your anger out on your children. I don't know, maybe. But I'm going to tell you, I'll be 58 years old this year. And I still remember some of the things that my dad had said to me. And if it wasn't for my relationship with Jesus Christ and having the love of my Father who is in heaven, I would struggle with a lot of those things to this day. But here's what happened. I do not allow that to control me because I know better. I know who I am. And so that doesn't unseat me, but it still didn't, it still stings. And we're like, well, no, I'm telling you, words hang on forever. Words hang on forever. And so, Dad, don't criticize your children. You want to tell them the negative? Tell them the negative, but use it as a teaching tool. Don't just blow them out of the water because that criticism, man, is so destructive. And it hurts deep. And I'm going to tell you this, Dad, it really hurts the girls. It hurts both. You can't even say it doesn't. It hurts both equally. Don't destroy your children because you fail to control yourself. Don't do it. Number 9, neglect. Neglect of the relationship, neglect of all this stuff that we've talked about. There's a true biblical example, and that is Absalom, David's son. And David, he was indifferent to Absalom, and by being indifferent to him, the result was that there was rebellion, civil war, and then ultimately Absalom's death. Because Absalom was completely angry at his dad because David wasn't doing what he needed to do, and Absalom wanted done what was the right thing to do. And the family was falling apart because David became so indifferent. And he just wouldn't stay plugged in, and he just wouldn't do what was right, especially when it came to his family. And it caused massive division, heartache, and rebellion, and then ultimately death. And so, dads, don't neglect your children. Don't be indifferent, man. I'm telling you, get in there and love on them and pay attention to them and grow them and invest in them and talk to them and pray with them and ask them how they're doing, and then listen for the answers. Stop trying to overload them with your intelligence and listen to what they're learning. Listen to where they are at, and then you can help them get where they need to be if they're not there. And if they're in the right direction, you can keep encouraging them to go in the right direction. But man, you can't beat them down, and you can't ignore them, and you can't be indifferent. You can't, because I am telling you, and I gave you the stats in the beginning, dads, we are needed by our children. 80% of kids without a dad go to jail. 80%. That's a crazy stat. 75% of daughters is less likely to experience teen pregnancy if dad you're in the picture and you're loving on them and you're doing what's right. These are astounding numbers. So, Dad, listen to this and plug into your children. Like I'm imploring you to do this. Don't let your pride get in the way. Don't let your I'm the dad. That's crap. You are the dad, which means you dictate the direction your family goes, and that's why the Bible says that God will hold us accountable for our household. Listen, God's going to hold me accountable for my household. And God's going to hold you accountable for your household. And so how are we going to do this? Well, God said don't provoke your children, meaning don't anger them, don't belittle them, don't take away their spirit, don't discourage them, don't strip their heart. Don't do it. Number 10, last one. Children lose heart when there is excessive discipline. This is the parent who abuses his children either verbally, emotionally, or physically. There's no need for it. Don't abuse your children. Discipline, yes, but excessive discipline is abuse. And you know the crazy thing is, parents often say things to their children that they'd never say to anyone else. And parents talk to their children like they would never let someone else belittle their children or talk to their kids the way they talk to them. Never. Like if they heard someone speaking to their children the way some of these adults or these dads and moms are talking to their children, man, they'd go off on them. I know I've heard some parents belittle their children so much that to the point it's so excessive that I've had to step in and go, man, that's the problem with your child is you're the problem. Or don't you see how good this kid is? Why are you trying to destroy this kid? Don't be excessive. You're not going to get anywhere. You're not. You're not going to grow this. You're not going to build this. Your child. It's just not going to happen. And if I've heard, man, I'm telling you, if someone spoke to my children the way I hear some of you out there speak to your kids, if you come up and spoke to my child the way you spoke to your child, I would bust you right across the face. Yep, I'm a pastor. I would throat punch you if you talk to my children the way you talk to your children. Because I would never do that to my child. I would never destroy my child that way. And so dads, stop it. Stop. You know, Ephesians 6:4 says this, and you, fathers. And if you double click on fathers, it literally means, and I'm going to pull this over into this, masculine father, forefather, literally someone's male parent. And what I find so intriguing and interesting about this, and you can see it, it's right here. I've got it up on the screen. Anybody that wants to, that if you're looking at it, watching it on TV. You see the bottom half of the screen, it's got the verse, the top half of the screen, it's got the definition of fathers. Because some people are like, hey, parents. And no, this is literally someone's male parent, the father, not the mom. Why is it that God tells the father in 3 different places, minimum, at least 2, I've given you 2, Colossians and Ephesians. Why is it that God is very specific to the fathers to not provoke wrath, to not provoke your children? Why? Why isn't there a verse that says moms don't provoke your children? Because look, we know moms can be just as guilty and nasty to the kids as a dad can be. I mean, let's not minimize this. So why is it the scriptures are very specific to the dad? And it's because dad carries the greater impact. I'm not minimizing mom. She has her role. But look how many moms are in the picture, and still 80% of the kids, 84% of the kids go to prison. And the reason? Dad's not in the picture. Mom's there. Why isn't mom stopping them from going to prison? Because dad, you have that much influence. That's why the Bible says fathers. Look, mom's there. Why are 75% of the girls still getting pregnant? Because dad, you're that difference maker. You're the one. You're it. You're it. That's what I'm trying. That's my whole point that I'm trying to get to. You are the factor. That's why the scriptures say dad, fathers. Not listen. So many people are like, oh, well, it doesn't mean father. It means the parent. And you parents don't provoke your children. No. Scripturally speaking, in context of the passage of both of them that I've given you, the word is the male parent, dad. Because dad, you make that much difference. There's statistically, if mom gets saved and goes to church, 17% of the time, the children will go to church and get saved. 17%. If dad gets saved and goes to church, 94% of the time, the children will go to the church and get saved. 94% versus 17%. These are real world stats that I'm giving you. Dad, you make that much difference. That is the fatherhood factor that I've laid out there. And I wasn't trying for this podcast to be negative. I just want you to understand, Dad, you carry that much weight. I say dads are the difference maker. Not that moms aren't. But when it comes to real world life and children being a product that is valuable to society, dads, you make the difference. Mom, your investment's invaluable too, but just on a different level, different ways. Dad, stop abusing your children. Stop neglecting them, ignoring them. Start encouraging them and loving on them. And, sometimes it's just a big hug. I love you. And how you doing today, son? How you doing today, sweetie? And then listen and encourage them. Makes all the difference in the world. But if you want something out of your child, belittling them will never get it. Beating them will never get it. Leaving them alone will never get it. It's you investing in them, building them up, and showing them that they matter. Showing them that they're important. Empowering them to be good, balanced, functioning adults. That's what matters, Dad. Get involved. You got to get involved. There's just no other way around it. All right, guys. Hey, I hope that this has helped you. And I truly do hope that this, even though in all the negative of this podcast, that it was a positive in the fact that it showed you what not to do. And if you're doing it, hopefully it encouraged you to stop. And again, it doesn't matter if your child is adolescent, teenager, or adult. Don't abuse them. Don't beat them down. Don't verbally tear them apart. Don't do that. Because, Dad, you carry the weight, whether they're adolescent, teenager, or adult, because as children love their dads, and children really want their dad's approval. They need their dad's approval. They need their dad's love. They need their dad's strength. They need their dad's direction. They need and want dad's involvement in their life, but it's just got to be healthy. And so, Dad, I'm encouraging you to do that and praying that that's where you're at and that's what you're doing. And if not, I pray that you truly do or start doing that and make the difference in your kids' lives. Hey, guys, I hope this has helped. And if it has, please like, share, subscribe, and follow. And until next time, God bless.